You can make a case that the best way to judge strikers, especially like pure number 9s, is on the goals that they score that make a difference. You know, if your team needs you, do you deliver? For Gyökeres to take that touch, to hit that ball so purely in that game against those opponents, I think that's a real difference maker of a goal. It's the sort of thing that can transform a player's season, maybe even his Arsenal career.
A Premier League weekend that began with dread for Arsenal ends in joy and life for the Gunners and the number one fan and Arsenal Coffee Cup aficionado Thomas Frank. For Spurs supporters, your club's demons, clearly more powerful even than Arsenal's. Manchester City, relentless, taking the points, the Caparinas, the daiquiris to handle the pressure of the title chase. It's called repression, that, Pep. Liverpool commit a crime, I tell you. At Nottingham Forest, a smash and grab that deserves and will probably get its own true crime podcast series to make it all make sense. It's a joy to welcome man of words, the Hamnet of football, straight out of Harrogate. It's my friend, Mr. Rory Smith.
How are you coping with the wintry conditions, Rog? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm looking outside. We are under about 5 feet of snow here. We're totally snowed in. I honestly feel raw. Don't like to be hyperbolic, but I believe Bodo Glimt is warmer than the east coast of America right now.
They might be better prepared in Bodo Glimt. They might have the kind of, that's the expectation that there will be 5 or 6 feet of snow at all times. Whereas for you, it's a little bit more changeable, I suppose.
Genuinely, Bodo Glimt is like a walk in the park here. You did just say something quite funny. You said, when you look out the window, you see what right now?
I can currently see, well, it's gone now, Rog, but just before we started recording, I saw this shining yellow orb in the sky. I assume there'll be some sort of CIA file on it.
They don't have a word for it in the Yorkshire, do they?
No, we've got like 37 words for rain, but we the shining yellow disc of some sort, it seems to sort of emanate heat and light. We're trying to work out what it is. There's a lot of nervousness around. We're scared, Rog. We're scared.
Well, yeah, some of you are scared. Some of you are melting down your jewellery to make a golden calf and pray to your new sun god, which I just love. Behold! Want to give huge thanks to Bank of America, official bank of US soccer, and the FIFA World Cup 2026 for supporting the Men in Blazers media network. Discover what's possible in sports and in life. What would you like the power to do? I was actually back in the UK for 48 hours last week. I was in Liverpool for a chunk to spend some time with Jeremy Frimpong, who was really life affirming. But as cold as it is in New York City, and it is incredibly cold numbers wise, and although it was technically warmer in Liverpool Raw, what amazed me, and I grew up there, but I forget, no one has the right cold weather outfits in the city. The whole commitment to the tracksuit thing that kind of drives fashion stays so strong. Everyone was freezing, slightly angry because of it. But I do think the only thing that's keeping that city warm is chain smoking cigarettes.
No, I think England particularly has got like an element of mixed personality disorder. Like we are a population that thinks we live in a hotter country than we do. And that is, wherever you go, especially in the north, like people are just not dressed appropriately for the weather. We should be wearing, fur-lined boots and thermal trousers and all the stuff that you would wear in Norway or Sweden.
Shouting mush mush as you go. Yeah, in your little chariots pulled by packs of dogs. But
we don't think like that. We think basically we will dress like it's spring all of the time and not notice it. So this is that my son, on the walk to school today, having seen the shining yellow orb, paid obeisance to it. He made some sort of, he kind of, put some money down, some precious things to hope that the yellow orb would be nice to him. He said, "Do you know what, Dad? I think I'm going to go to school in shorts tomorrow." And you realise it's like 4 degrees in February. What are you talking about? What are you doing?
I mean, the shorts thing is just like genuine. If your kids, every kid goes through it, the boys' commitment to shorts at school thing. If that is your rebellion for your kid, then you're doing pretty bloody well. But I realise one of my many, many, many weaknesses is that I'm constantly wrongly dressed for the weather. Like my family laugh, I'm either wearing heavy wools when I'm in New Orleans sweating like a monster, or like we're going out and I'm wearing a t-shirt when it's -10. And I realise maybe that's probably the most English trait in me. I look at Newcastle games and enjoy the fans deciding when it's like -10. Great time to get your belly out with like toon tattoos around your big belly button. But maybe I am that human being too.
Maybe that deep down within you is the northern English element of, it's cold, I better show how masculine I am by not wearing the correct clothing.
But let's get to the football. I just say, Houston, we are coming to you. March 4th, 99 days out from the World Cup, with a celebration with JJ Watt, The man who invented the number 99 tickets are in our show notes, a couple left, and I can't wait to be with you. Let's start, though, with a toast. Where's my beer? Oh, let's raise my third first Michelob Ultra of the day to Mr. James Milner, who on Saturday broke the record for the most Premier League appearances, result of 23 long years of dedication, sacrifice, commitment and training, a career in which he was both the league's second youngest scorer and also its second oldest. He's done it in his own style, class, dedication, professionalism that matches that longevity. Just a raft of stats that are eye-popping, each one more than the last. Of the 876 players to make over 100 appearances in the last 24 seasons, Milner's played with or against 99.9% of them. He's had 281 teammates playing alongside him, players born from every year from 1968 to 2007. None of this makes sense because James Milner doesn't really make sense. He's a man of steady character and unwavering commitment to the collective. John Oliver came on our show and suggested Milner was the best bass player in the world. He said he's the Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers of the Premier League. And it was really a measure of the man that the Brighton players had to push him out at full time to revel in the fans' rapturous plaudits. The game, much needed Brighton win, 2-0 over Brentford. That win probably pleased James Milner as much as anything. He's a quiet man. He's the soul of every locker room he's in, a man who's lived his career by, these were his words that he described it, and I love them. He said, don't waste a day. Just concentrate and improve as much as you can. Start with good standards because they'll lead you through. You get one chance and you don't want to realise you've missed an opportunity down the line. Raw, those are words to live by, not just for footballers, but for any human being.
Yeah, I think James Milner's all an act. I think secretly he's got a fleet of sports cars. I think he's got a load of household staff who he's not very nice to. I think he's got a rider wherever he turns up. No, he is. It's really hard not.
High maintenance Milner.
Yeah, he's a massive diva, kind of constantly throwing strops. He apparently at one club told his teammates they weren't allowed to look him in the eye. They had to kind of go through his agent to talk to him. No, he is. He's just a really uplifting presence, James Milner, I think. He is that rare thing, which I think is basically universally admired. And given how tribal football has always been, but also has become, that's really remarkable that most fans of most clubs quite like James Milner. Obviously, it doesn't hurt the fact that he's a Yorkshireman. He's from the same part of Leeds as my wife. Upstanding characters, both of them. Not sure who's got the highest standards. Could be James Milner. He's also very much the person you think he is. I remember meeting him before one of Liverpool's Champions League finals. They went on a training camp to Marbella, I think, before the 2019 game against Tottenham. And I was there to interview Andy Robertson. But Milner was sort of sat around with Robertson, they're very close friends. And we started chatting, and we had a good 10-15 minute chat about the best way to get from South Manchester to Manchester City's training ground. Which roads do you take? Where's the traffic worst? What time do you have to leave? It was just a really remarkably boring conversation, which is not the sort of thing you get to have with a footballer very often.
Do you think he does this on purpose? He tries to cement his reputation as boring James Milner, and he walks off after those convos, just winks to himself. He goes, another one. I've fed the myth of boring James Milner,
and returns to life with his depraved sex fetish. Possibly.
Yeah. And then he's going out to another journalist and be like, what kind of string do you like using the most? What brand of strings you really enjoy? Because they've all got their strengths and weaknesses, haven't they? God bless, never change. And I do think, ultimately, the measure of the man, what Jurgen Klopp talked about, how he didn't really realise how powerful a presence James Milner was in his locker room until he left, when he realised he did almost everything to create a structure, cement the togetherness between the different nationalities, ethnicities, personalities. It was that personality which genuinely harnessed all that was good. Godspeed and thank you. Thank you also, quick word, to those of you, I'm starting to do all of the press for the release of my World Cup book, We Are the World Cup. It comes out on March the 3rd, next week. And a few thousand of you have pre-ordered this bad boy, which is a mad thing to do. I know it is, to pre-order a book. I can't wait, honestly, to send you out this week all the signed book plates and limited edition posters of the cover to thank you. If you've not pre-ordered it but are thinking about it and you have it in your heart to do so, go go to our website, meninblazers.com, upload the receipt for the book, and I will send you a lot of signed stuff with my love and my thanks, and I will never forget it. But to the football, let's start with the big one, Raw. Tottenham 1. Arsenal 4. It happened. A game played in the wake of Arsenal's midweek historic implosion, that 2-2 draw against Wolves. It honestly felt like a back-breaking defeat. I was in London last week. I'll say the word bottle job was faintly bubbling up, audible everywhere on every street. So this was a game played not so much under the sword of Damocles, that kind of ancient Greek fable about the pain of power and success. It was more under the bottle of Damocles, if you will. A fact that was registered by Spurs, probably is their best player on the day, their PA announcer, who before the game bellowed, "They're worried, they're nervous as hell, we're calm, we're ready." And at the moment we thought no lies there. But we got to be candid. Arsenal were quaking to play a team who had not won a game in 2026, Raw. I think they'd won actually just 2 of their previous 17 league games. Only 5 games total since November 24. They had 12 players out injured, 13 fit to choose from. The fans in a very toxic public revolt against ownership. And their new ferryman manager, Igor Tudor, spent his pre-match press conference trying to unpack whether his team were, quote, Spursy, which the journalist flung in his face from day one. This was a game, Raw, played on scar tissue for both teams.
Yeah, I think that draw with Wolves really kind of made flesh all of Arsenal's concerns, their fears, their anxieties. It was kind of there was an element of kind of sweating nightmare about it, because it meant a sizable seismic change at the top of the table. Manchester City are now in control of their own destiny again. So are Arsenal, because they still have to play each other. But this title race that Arsenal seem to have controlled almost from kind of September, suddenly City are in it. They are reeling them back in. They're not going away. You know, Declan Rice talked about how they'd had a meeting after the Wolves game, to try and clear the air, kind of set their agenda for the rest of the season. All of that stuff. Whenever, and it's not just an Arsenal thing. Whenever that happens, you do sort of think, okay, this is a moment of real examination, like real mental test, because you clearly understand the stakes. You clearly understand that something has shifted. And you now have to respond to that. And that is a massive challenge. I actually think it was perfect having the North London derby for them. I think it was the right game. Partly because it requires focus. It requires knowing that you can't let anything slip. Even outside the situation in the league table, you have to win that game. And partly because I think Spurs had talked themselves into a position that was quite unrealistic, which was that we've sacked Thomas Frank. He was the root of all of our ills. Therefore, we suddenly stand a chance in this game. With all due respect to Igor Tudor and those handful of Spurs players who are fit, that was not going to be the case.
What are you talking about? A false sense of who they are? They're worried. They're nervous as hell. We're calm. By the way, I read it as if he was saying, "We're calm. We're ready." I'm sure he shouted, "We're calm. We're ready.
We're really calm."
Yeah, no, everyone stay calm. I actually agree with you about the North London derby, and I'll actually up that ante one more and say I think it was actually good that it was at Tottenham Stadium.
Yeah.
Away from the anxiety of that, that fan base. Every Arsenal player we've had on the last month, we've talked about whether they can feel the fans. Footballers are kind of trained to say nothing, but they do admit they feel it in great times and in bad times. Away from that anxiety for this key game, could have only been a good. Let the record show, and I do think it's important. Igor Tudor went 3 at the back, had Cullen Muani, who's coached before Juventus, up top in place of Solanke. Tudor on the sideline, looking very much like every single baddie assassin in, I think, 33% of the ball movies. Inherited a team that had won just twice at home all season. Ultimate test of mentality for both teams. This is what I want to acknowledge. Arsenal were facing their own mortality from the kickoff. They're also facing Igor Tudor's low block. In the early exchanges, was that prolonged officials' timeout, which I'm guessing only allowed Arsenal even more to marinate in their own demons. And that game became scrappy in that first half hour. A knife fight, a bog of physical and mental turmoil. Raw. It was a bit of a mess, to be honest, the early exchanges, which probably would have been exactly the kind of terrain Tudor would have wanted. Yeah,
I was going to say that it was perfect for Tottenham, because Arsenal were the better team. They were the more assertive team, and they had the better chances, if you take a very generous definition of the word chances. But I think if you're Spurs, you go into that game and think, well, what we have to do is play on Arsenal's nerves. We'll get to it, but obviously the day before City had won, it was 2 points. It was only 2 points. The longer you keep that game at 0-0, the longer you make your opponent think, we are better than this team, but if we make a single mistake, then we have a problem. That's what your game plan is. That has to be your game plan in those circumstances. And for half an hour, Spurs did it pretty well.
Yeah, at T Court wrote in the Men in Blazers Discord, all this frantic open play and passing and tackling, it's exhausting. Here's to hoping we get exactly what we tuned in for, a belaboured 8-minute review of an inconclusive video footage of a VAR goal to come. What Igor Tudor differences did you see, Raw? Because there was fight from Tottenham in that first half. These players flinging themselves around as if they suddenly feared that their manager may go medieval with a blowtorch on their asses if they fail him. Before we move to the Arsenal happy place, I do want to acknowledge I saw a difference. Did you?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit more fight, a little bit more urgency, a bit more grit maybe. But then I think it's difficult to know whether you ascribe that to Tudor or whether you say, well, it's the North London derby, so the players would have played like that anyway, or whether you even say it's kind of a realisation from Spurs' players of quite how desperate their situation is, could be, might be getting. There was obviously a tactical difference in how Tudor lined them up. We'll get on to whether it works or not. In terms of attitude, it did seem to have changed, but I don't know whether that's him or whether that's the circumstances.
Then, the moment, 32nd minute, Saka pulled one back from the sidelines. And who was there? Oh, it had to be him. Eberici Eze flicked the ball up into the area of first touch, which felt a little clumsy, but the second, divine, 100% pure kung fu fighting. A man who, stats show, he hadn't even had a shot on goal since he last scored that hat-trick against Tottenham 18 games earlier. I mean, he's gone through a world of hurt, to be honest, a world of doubt. A world in which he spent more time in the substitutes bib than he ever would have dreamt of. But we know one thing, Raw. He proper hates the Tottenham, almost as much as he hates the Wigan. His fourth goal against Spurs this season. It was an amazingly beautiful moment. It was like something from WebMD where a man has been terribly, terribly constipated. And then suddenly he wasn't anymore. If only there's a phrase commonly used in football that begins with doctor and ends in Tottenham to describe the cure that the world had just witnessed.
Yeah, but Eberici Eze seems to kind of only want to see Dr. Tottenham. It's the only, like, he goes to the surgery and he's like, I'm not seeing anybody else. I want to see Dr. Tottenham. That's the only person. I'll wait.
Yeah.
When does he have an appointment? To be honest, Rose, this doesn't sound like desperately serious analysis, but the only thing you can assume is that he really hates Spurs. Like, he genuinely wants to score against Spurs than anybody else. I do think that it kind of suggests, we've said this before, it's not that Arteta has gone off Eze. It's not that Eze doesn't fit into the way that Arsenal play. I think a lot of the reason we've not seen that much of him over the winter is because he's played a lot of football in the first half of the season and Arteta is resting him. He is protecting him. And it may well be that this is the start of Eberici Eze being quite a decisive figure for Arsenal at the business end of the season.
Igor Tudor, though, is definitely a man that listens constantly in his car to a book on tape of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Appear weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak, because within 2 bloody minutes, Tottenham were back in it, and it came from Arsenal's own hand in probably the most agonising of ways. Declan Rice had been talking ahead of the game how Arsenal needed to stop beating themselves. There's a clip that has been replayed 1 million times in which after Arsenal scored, he was the one doing in the huddle, like, let's keep our heads, You should never do that, footballers. Why would you do that? Just do that. That's why you do that. You do the speaking through the closed hand so we don't see this and then meme you terribly, because it was his decision making. Decided to try and dance. I think it was in Muani and Simons on the edge of the box. Muani picked his pocket and charged on in and drove the ball through a completely gobsmacked David Raya. I think the phrase is, oh my days. First goal from Muani, all 3 names in the Premier League, and it came against the Arsenal. 3rd game in a row. Arsenal have very quickly conceded after scoring.
Yeah, and again, it's punching a bruise, isn't it? It's Arsenal had scored, they will have settled down, and all of a sudden, all of that good work feels undone. You have to remember that to Arsenal, a draw feels like a defeat. In any game this season, maybe particularly in the North London derby, maybe not. They are conscious that City are there, breathing down their necks. Any draw feels like a defeat. And all of a sudden, they've kind of done it to themselves. And I think that would have been a really challenging 5 minutes plus half time for Arsenal to think, okay, we've been just about the better team. We took the lead. We've thrown it away again. This keeps happening. We are under even more intense pressure, not least as at that stage, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium's trying to go up for it. They're suddenly thinking, oh, hang on, maybe we are calm. Maybe they are nervous. And all of a sudden you kind of get this, it's the psychological challenge of trying to win a title, isn't it? That you have to respond in this really intense period.
I agree, Raw. That Arsenal locker room at half-time must have been, it must have been like, as anxiety-filled as like Dr. Melfi's waiting room. This was a must-win moment. It really was. And so it was remarkable on so many levels. 2 minutes into the second half, fine ball from Timber from the flank to the feet of Gyökeres. First touch, got himself organised. Second, we knew this. Man can hit a ball as if it was the head of his enemy. And finally, scoring a massive goal in a massive game. And it was honestly stunning to witness. And you could tell he was so bloody shocked. He was so bloody relieved is probably more accurate. Also, trying to play it chill in the Scando way. He just kind of ran around trying to make it very clear that it was all no big deal. I think he did several Bain Sellies all over the place. This was a moment. This was a massive moment. A big goal in a big game for Big Vic. Kind of shredding that flat track bully narrative which has kind of tarnished him and really soaring when his team needed him.
Yeah, I think you can make a case that the best way to judge strikers, especially like pure number 9s, is on the goals that they score that make a difference. If your team needs you, do you deliver? The logic is always, it's the hardest thing to do in football is to score a goal. I actually don't think that's true. I think the hardest thing to do in football is to create a goal, but that's a matter of personal opinion, Rog. But for Gyökeres, if you think about everything he's been through this season, all the struggles he's had, there must have been, as much as it's been discussed in the media and on social media among the fans, internally for Viktor Gyökeres, this season must have been a torment at times. As much as he will, I'm sure, think, I'm contributing to the team, I'm playing quite well, I'm doing this and this well, he will know, at Sporting, in Portugal, I was judged by my goals. Great gluts of massive volume goals. He was a volume guy. And he's not done that for Arsenal. He scored fits and spurts, often kind of the second or third goal, not the difference makers. He will be putting himself under intense pressure to prove that this move was the right one, to prove that he is good enough to do the thing that Arsenal want him to do. And in that moment, and I think there are question marks over the defending, Rog, I will admit, I don't think, no matter how bad Viktor Gyökeres has been at times this season, you should give him 3 seconds on the edge of the box. I think that's a bad idea. But to take that touch, to hit that ball so purely, to make it do exactly what you wanted it to do, in those circumstances, in that game, against those opponents, I think that's a real difference maker of a goal, to be honest. It's the sort of thing that can transform a player's season, maybe even his Arsenal career.
Godspeed. By the way, the way you described the defending, it's almost like an NBA player like Ben Simmons who's got no outside shot and like the defender's almost giving him that shot, almost dead. It's not got there for Gyökeres and it will not get there again after that finish. It was absolutely humanly ecstatic. By the way, we do need to acknowledge there was a Spurs equaliser overruled for a push on Gabriel. Let's just say, dude has practiced. Is flopping. I think ever since, you remember that Anthony Gordon goal Newcastle scored? Was it the Joe Linton push in the back where he didn't quite theatric and he didn't bring enough Chalamet spice to the role. But all of that ultimately was, as narrative, was kind of dumped in the annals of history when Arsenal scored again. Eberechi Eze created for Saka, finished his block shot. I'd just say, Roy, in that moment I thought Arsenal, if they really want to succeed, their transfer policy should be, let's stop scouting players, just come in and sign whoever Spurs are about to sign, just when they're on the cusp of putting that signature on the Tottenham contract, because they will never forget how you saved them from doom. They will never forget that you took them away from Spurs, redeemed them, maybe just against the Spurs, which, by the way, most Arsenal fans, I do believe, would take from Eberechi Eze. If he just and only scores against Tottenham, this rivalry, I hate to use the word hatred because I don't really love hate in the world, but it rings so loud. I think Arsenal fans, if he only ever scored against Spurs, he'd become an Arsenal legend on par with the Invincibles.
I think if Eberechi Eze retired today, he would go down as an Arsenal legend. He's done it. How much did he cost? £60 million, something like that. Yeah. $75 million.
Yeah.
Paid it back.
Yeah.
In fact, the one thing, my main disappointment with Mikel Arteta from this game, from the North London derby, you have a common duty, a decency, and it's a matter of decency, Rog, to leave Eberechi Eze on to let him score another hat-trick against Tottenham. It's outrageous that he took him off. That he's a player on a double hat-trick against your rivals in the same season, his debut season, and you take him off. He's not, as we've said, he's protected Eze over the winter. He's not kind of running on fumes at this stage. Leave him on, let him score a hat-trick in each game against Tottenham. All of his teammates, I guarantee, would have been thinking, be hilarious if we can get Ebbs a third one here. If he can do it again, they will have wanted to do that.
Yeah, and by the way, someone needs to explain to Arteta the concept of lols, right?
Yeah, there's a point where you just have to think that football is about trophies and attainment and data and, managing minutes and all that serious stuff and set pieces and grinding out fine margins. But it's also about vibes and what the entire country wanted in that stage. I saw tweets from people who are not Arsenal fans saying, it will be so funny if Eze scores another hat-trick.
Yeah, which is why we watch. By the way, I've just realised, and by the way, Gabriel is probably the one to speak to Arteta about lols. I think few Arsenal players understand memes. He is a meme master on top of everything. Arsenal, if you're listening, I know you're always trying to find like the minimal details, what will transform the team. If you sign one person in the summer transfer window, sign Wolves' TikTok social media person. What they did to Arsenal after that 2-2 draw, the TikTok they put out, the time wasting and Martinelli. I mean, the number of clicks, but the number of lols. Ultimately, football is now reduced. It's not points. It's not placement. It's not European journeys of valour. We're in a lols-filled world, right, Rob?
The three things that Britain has that it can export to the world.
Yep.
It used to be the royal family.
I know.
We're not as keen on that anymore. Let's not talk about that.
I always used to say that. I used to say the three things England has is Downton Abbey, which is no longer on. The royal family. And then the Premier League. But go deeper.
The prince formerly known as Andrew. It's the BBC, which we're very proud of. The people like the BBC. It's the Premier League, and it's the concept of banter. Banter, I would say, is an inherently British concept. I don't know if the French, for example, have a word for banter. I don't know if the French do it. I've certainly never seen it in the wild. The Italians, maybe. The Germans definitely don't. But that is kind of what fuels modern Britain. We don't have a lot. It's a small, wet island in the North Sea. What we want is funny stuff to happen that we can all laugh about a bit. And Eberechi Eze scoring 2 hat-tricks in one season against Tottenham when he had almost signed for them, that's banter.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating. Bants. I mean, I hate the word.
I can't stand it either.
I genuinely, it's like, there's words I'm just not, kudos, I can't stand that word.
I like kudos.
I can't stand that. Kudos. It just reminds me of like...
I wouldn't use it in conversation like that, Ross. Kudos to you. Yeah, no.
It's just like, I'm always like, I'd genuinely rather peel my flesh off, but like, bants is like in that. Are there not words that like annoy you, Ro?
Banter's what I don't like when people say, banter. I don't like that.
Banter!
Also, it's not the words, it's the tone of voice. I also don't like legend for the same reason. Legend, don't like it. No.
Legend.
No.
I hate it when in the commentary they say fizz. He's got to fizz that across. I never understand.
Fizz.
He's got to fizz that across the box.
A fizz in cross is a specific type of cross, Roger. In the same way as a rasping shot is a specific type of shot.
The reality of bants is so insane. We are reduced to it, and I see it with Eze. First of all, I want you to know I'm so happy for that. I am very, 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 very fond of Eberechi.
This is basically an Eberechi Eze fan podcast.
What else is it?
It's nothing else.
By the way, if you've not seen it, he came on our YouTube on Thursday. He and I played chess, but we talked about his life, his journey, his faith. We talked about a lot of things. What he feels when he scores a goal and looks at fans, which is genuinely, it was really, really beautiful and very, it's one of the most emotionally articulate footballers I've met. And I know that it's been a tough, he cares about, he talked about how he doesn't care about the now, he cares about the long game. And I've thought a lot about him in this Arsenal season, desperate for playing time, lost in the depth chart, desperate to play for Arsenal, which he loves as a child, from being a child, desperate to play, and Thomas Tuchel was there yesterday, a role in the England World Cup squad. It is, two things. Number one, it's amazing on the YouTube. If you look underneath the comments, like the comments were, shut up, you're rubbish, you need to do things, get a grip. And then suddenly, randomly, just who knew? After the game yesterday, the conversation just pivots in the chat. It's like, you're amazing. You were a gift from God. Ebbs, you're the best foot. I mean, it's unbelievable. Bants is not just Bants. Bants flips in the blink of an eye.
Oh, you can't rely on it. It's an elusive, chimerical beast. Is banter? It can work for you. It can work against you. None of us are in control of it. It's a kind of force. It's like a life force that is equal parts joy and spite. That's what I like about it.
Bants will always destroy us. But watching Eze drive forward in this game, watching Eze create and surge, this was the other thing. We watched the true maverick spirit, which is both good and bad, because it is, for me, a question for Arteta for the rest of the season. This is a control-obsessed man. He is in that risk-reward. Let's file Arteta with the non-high-risk personality. You know, he's always going to prefer Ødegaard's kind of trust, reliability, consistency, both sides of the ball, you know, triggering that press. I guess the question for me for Arsenal season is, how much does he trust or ride the untamed spirit of Eze, who said in his interview with me that he remains a player forged in the street ball cages of his youth? And how much does he kind of fear that?
It's an interesting, it sounds a bit poncy, but it's an interesting dichotomy, because Ødegaard is in many ways the kind of ultimate academy footballer. He is exactly the player that all of those kind of illustrious industrialised academies want to produce. He's incredibly intelligent. He's really efficient, Ødegaard. He makes incredibly smart tactical decisions basically all of the time. He's so well drilled. I'm not saying he doesn't have any natural talent, obviously, but he's so well drilled strategically that he's harnessed that talent perfectly to the collective. Whereas Eze, because his path has been different, Eze is a little bit more off the cuff. He's a little bit more spontaneous. I suspect he's harder to kind of fit into an absolute system, the like of which Arteta wants to play.
He's not a systems player.
He's not a systems player, or at least he has the ability to be a systems player, but it feels like it's a bit of a waste of what makes him special. So I think there's probably two questions. One for Arteta is, can you find the freedom in your system to get the best out of him, to allow him to be himself? And the other one's for everyone else, which is, would it feel like a shame if Eberechi Eze was kind of blended into a system, if he became a slightly diluted version of himself, but won more? It's an interesting kind of emotional test, I think.
It's so funny because I'm just trying to not shout out, let love rule, Mikel, which I don't know even what that means. But I do know it is incredible. Only Robert Pires, 7 goals, Emmanuel Adebayor, 6, have more Premier League goals for Arsenal against Tottenham than Eberechi has 5. But he's got as many as like giant legends, Thierry Henry, Robin van Persie, and he's done it all in 150 minutes. Less than 2 games on the field. We do need to acknowledge David Raya stopped Richarlison from scoring, scooped the ball heroically off the line. I do believe he was like, yeah, we can let it in. Oh, hang on, that was Richarlison did the backflip, and he just dived back with the save of glory. And that was important because it prevented the torture, the torment of it becoming a 1-goal game in the last 5 minutes, which would have been, a crucible of pain. Gyökeres ultimately wrapped it up with a 2nd goal late. And suddenly we celebrate him. Same people who were pulling out the stats on Saturday that show that he disappears in big games and there's been like no shots in big games. Now we're all saying, he's got 10 goal contributions against all comers in 2026. No Premier League player has more. Raw. Selective stat padding might be the most football fan thing of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because it works with all teams, and we've seen it a lot. You've actually, I will credit you with this, Roger. It's you kind of pointed it out to me. It's amazing how quickly, team hasn't won in 5 becomes, well, they've only lost 1 in 9. That it seems to be one of those Premier League seasons that every weekend, everyone's stats don't only change, obviously as they always do, but the focus on them flips completely the other way. So it's unbeaten in 17. You've only won 1 in 10, and you think, well. It's the same with Gyökeres, so you can read the stats however you like. I think there is no question that if you take not just the numbers, but the eye test, he has improved in the last few weeks. He looks more himself. I think what the North London derby proves is if you give him the ball in areas that he wants the ball, he is a very effective footballer. I don't think he's ever going to turn into original Ronaldo. I just don't think he's of that level. But he is a really good finisher. He just needs to be fed in a certain way, and Arsenal will, over time, start to work that out, I think.
God willing, on this day, delight, 4 goals from open play for Arsenal. Biggest win at Spurs in the Premier League era. Earliest St. Totteringham's Day ever. And even though I now have got my Arsenal fans in my WhatsApp chat all trying to calculate, well, this was just against the Spurs. What exactly does that prove? What's the exchange rate of a win against the Spurs? Raw, I'm old enough to remember when Arsenal's title dream was meant to be over. It was bottle this and bottle that. I'll just say, to rebound with a 4-1 beatdown of your arch rival, to be able to sing "You're Going Down" to Tottenham Hotspur, you're getting sacked in the morning to Igor Tudor, who's going to be like, me? What? Do you think I care? We'll talk about Tottenham in a moment, but Arsenal joy is back. This felt like more than a win to me. Felt like an exorcism of doubt, the indomitability of Arsenal's spirit. Arteta said he hoped it would be a turning point. They lead the table by 5 points. They played a game more than Man City. They've got goal difference in their favour. 11 games to go. Can we get a pulse check?
It's a test passed. We know it's going to be like this in the run-in for Arsenal, because it's what it's been like for Arsenal all season, that going for the title in the position they've been in since September, you are met with a succession of challenges, and you have to pass those challenges. And yeah, drawing with Wolves in midweek presented them with a challenge. Does it meant that the maths had changed at the top of the table and suddenly City were in control? If City win all of their games, they are champions. That is a major difference for Arsenal. They could not have responded any better. They did exactly what they needed to do. They passed that test. That's all. That's the only way you can look at it. It's another little tick in the box to say reasons to believe Arsenal can hold on and win the title.
For Tottenham, at Rob, asked in our Discord, what's the opposite of a new manager bounce? Is it a new manager pothole? I mean, I thought Igor Tudor was fascinating post-game. Really, I mean, he's got nothing to lose. He's like, I'm going to truth bomb my way through the next couple of weeks. He said, I know the truth about this team. Now I saw the truth. It's not nice, but it's how it is. His Spurs are 5th bottom, 2 points above Forest, 4 above West Ham. Those two teams arguably have shown more fight in the last month. They've got the pain of 2 4-1 beatdowns in the game their fans most care about. That's probably the greatest agony in a season full of it. What I don't know, Raw, is medium term what they do, because in that managerial count, this summer's carousel is going to be, Manchester United bringing in, Real Madrid bringing in, possibly some of Manchester City. Liverpool, Barcelona will also be hiring a new manager. We don't know yet. It's a long term I honestly worry about, but let's stay short term. They're not going to get relegated, are they?
Well, you keep saying this, Roger. And look, I've given you, credit for your insightful thought on the way that kind of the Premier League statistics shift every day. I think you're wrong about Tottenham. You're very bullish on Tottenham Hotspur aren't going down. I don't think they're favourites to go down by any stretch of the imagination, but that is what is staring them in the face. Because, as you say, West Ham are picking up a few points here and there. Forest have got, they were well beaten by Liverpool at the weekend, but they've got plenty of quality in their squad. I almost said that with a straight face. They've got quality in their squad. You can see them getting out of it. I think there's been a study done today that suggests it's sort of 60% West Ham and 30% Forest or something. But Spurs are the next ones along, and if they don't win next weekend, if they don't win the week after that, then all of a sudden it's going to get to April, and they're going to be really, really under pressure. So that is what they have to be thinking about. They are not safe. They are not close to safety. They need to concentrate. They need to turn that round pretty fast.
Might be the ultimate bants that ever bounced if that does happen, and I pray. I do. Tottenham fans, I do see you as like kindred spirits. And I say this with love. You may not accept it, but to me, you're the Everton of the South. Huge, huge love in this moment of challenge to the Hunters. Manchester City 2, Newcastle 1. A geopolitical clash. Abu Dhabi against Saudi Arabia played out through their footballing proxies. Man City trying to ratchet up the pressure on Saturday on Arsenal, who are playing the next day, and show that they are the one who knocks. Newcastle, they never won a Premier League game at the Etihad. They're so poor on the road. City had already ripped them apart in the Carabao Cup semi-finals. Worse, The team were off a midweek 5,058-mile round trip to Azerbaijan for the Champions League game against Karabakh. And so it was no surprise when they imploded within a quarter of an hour. Marmoush on the break claps the Newcastle backline. Fed O'Reilly, so willing to be a runner alongside Haaland. Newcastle, resilient now, pace-filled. They came to pick at City's high line. Bravery rewarded on 22 minutes. Lewis Hall, best haul since Wolf, cracked a deflection past Donnarumma, but 4 minutes later City reasserted themselves. Really a beautiful piece of liquid creativity. Erling Haaland sent out wide by a really beautiful slip pass from Semenyo. The ball Haaland created, I don't think he gets enough respect for this. 7th assist of the season. I think only Bruno Fernandes has more. It was sent into the Manchester night just like a cool, inviting glass of raw milk for Nico O'Reilly again to dunk home. Raw, O'Reilly, 20-year-old City Academy product. What a versatile, technical footballer he is, Raw.
Testament to his versatility is the fact that we've come to know him, O'Reilly, over the last kind of year, maybe 18 months, as a left-back. But he's not a left-back. He has never been a left-back. In the academy, he was a midfielder. And I think an attacking midfielder, not even one of your kind of common or garden defensive midfielders. Pep has decided in the last few weeks to give him a little bit more of a chance in that role. Obviously, there's plenty of competition. This was very much his performance, his game, his day. Proof that that's where he probably belongs. That's where he will be that's where he will play long-term. But I think from City's point of view, to see him thriving in that role, as well as knowing that he can fill in at left-back if you need him to, that's an incredible plus for a player that's come out of your academy.
Second half, quite riveting. City really susceptible to the ball played in behind. And you couple that with City's inconsistency and their drop of intensity in second half of games. Newcastle maintain their belief. The Etihad did become a bowl of nerves down the stretch. City kind of restricted to just having Haaland bursting through, taking on one defender too many. I think Newcastle fans will be bloody frustrated. Their play was excellent in this one. Their game plan was excellent. They left for nothing. But they will remember that City fans were screaming for the whistle at the end. But when it came, total release. All that mattered were the points. 5 straight wins. Time for a trim, they tweeted. But they didn't play like a dominant 5 Premier League wins on the run team, Raw. They didn't at all. And part of the reason I do believe this title race is so magnetic is both the teams are human. Both the teams are flawed. Both the teams are vulnerable. This is not like the title winners of old who are going to rip off victory after victory after victory to the end of the season, aren't it? Yeah,
it's not like if you look through the fixture list for both Arsenal and City that you can kind of say, well, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win, and maybe pick out 1 or 2 games where there's a little bit of peril, a little bit of jeopardy. That's what it was like when Liverpool and City were going for the titles under Klopp and Guardiola, where you kind of knew both of them were going to win all of their games, except maybe one, and they dropped 2 points in that, and that would be decisive. This time, it's basically any game can trip you up. I think it's really strange that City have won 5 in a row. I don't quite understand how they've done that. They probably deserved to beat Newcastle but Newcastle were not out of the game at any point. Building up to Lewis Hall's goal, Newcastle were quite threatening. City, this sounds like bitterness, but City kind of got lucky to get a win at Anfield a couple of weeks ago. They didn't particularly deserve to win at Anfield, but they delivered when it mattered. It feels like they are getting results that maybe outstrip where the performances are, but that is in itself a really healthy trait. And if you're Arsenal, it's probably quite a worrying trait that you're looking at watching these games, particularly on Saturday when City played before Arsenal, you're watching City and thinking, Newcastle could get something here. They're in it. Anthony Gordon might make the difference. There's plenty of talent in that Newcastle team. And then City find a way through. It's an ominous habit to develop, I think. And you can tell how much it meant from the reaction at the end. Because the celebrations were really, really pronounced. If that was Arsenal, we would have accused them of over-celebrating.
That's
but it's
so
not.
Amazing. I recognise. I mean, by the way, we've talked about this, but Guardiola does nothing without premeditated thought. And so to watch him after that win, marching around like he knows there's title mischief about his reaction, whipping up the City fans. He knows he's going to need down this stretch. That's what I ultimately thought he was doing, orchestrating, trying to build a level of passion, trying to make sure the fans were where they needed to be for what's to come, but maniacally hugging the players. That was a man, we've seen this before, Raw, when he knows what's possible. No one's more familiar with it. He loves the smell of a title race in the morning. He kind of played it down post-game, though. He said... he did that quote he said about how he wants his players to take a lot of caparinas, daiquiris to handle the moment and then get ready for Leeds. Partially made me feel like he's getting more and more English with every day he lives in Manchester. But he was asked about what happens now, and he said, I have the feeling we're not going to win all the games. I don't know about Arsenal, but I've got a feeling we're not going to win all the games. Which, I mean, part of me is like, dude thinks they're going to win all the games, doesn't he? Is that what you think?
Yeah, he used to say that in those years when it was him and Klopp. He said it all of the time. We won't both win all of our games. And they both went and won all of their games. That's what happened. And I think it's a test. I don't quite get the psychology of it. I think to an extent he's saying to his players, prove me wrong. Prove to me that we can go and win all of our games. I think he's saying to Arsenal, you're not going to win all of your games. You will drop points here. That there's hurdles, there's obstacles, there's pratfalls on the road. You're going to hit them and we're not. I think that's what the message is. But it reminded me, he said it 2 or 3 times in those years when it was him and Klopp going head to head. And it normally presaged Manchester City winning 12 games in a row.
Oh my God. And the season is now about closing. No one closes football seasons better than Pep. Last 4 seasons, Arsenal have gleaned an average of 22.75 points from their last 12 games. They have 11 left now, actually. But City have gorged themselves, taking 30 out of a possible 36. For now, Arsenal 5 points clear. That +4 goal difference. That one more game played. Arsenal play Chelsea next weekend. City go to the bear pit of Leeds, across to the Midlands. Nottingham Forest 0, Liverpool 1. You said it, a deserved win. Dominant football.
Outstanding performance.
Against Nottingham Forest 4.0 into the new management of Pints and Points. Pereira, fresh off his first game, big European win at Fenerbahce. Probably, oddly, the less beleaguered manager. Is Forest on the cusp of the relegation zone? But on a slot rule, very quickly want to touch on this, had to spend the week responding to Wayne Rooney's claim that the Liverpool head coach does not have the, quote, aura to manage the club. He then had to point out he won the league title last season. This is where we are now, Raw. English football is we're almost in a post what have you done for me lately era. It's just the vibes, the optics, the bants that matter.
What have you done for me in the last 24 hours? That's basically what it comes down to. You can tell that Slot's getting quite frustrated with it because so many of the kind of accusations, allegations, criticisms that he has to face are answered by, I won the Premier League last year. It seems, I get what Rooney's criticism, I get what he means. I think there's a lot of Liverpool fans who probably think the same or at least have thought the same. But Arne Slot won the Premier League last year, and I think it's very odd to try and almost pretend that didn't happen or doesn't count. And I get very annoyed by this concept of bad champions because it's a new thing. It's a Roy Keaneism, and it's almost making you win your title again. So you win the title,
and then unless you have to relitigate it.
Yeah, unless you kind of come first, second, or maybe a close third the following year, you are officially characterised as bad champions. That's not a thing. You become champions over the course of the season in which you win the title, and then a new season starts. You don't have to win it twice. You don't get sort of... If Liverpool had come second this year, missing out by a point, they would have been good champions, I think. But you don't get another star for it. It's just... It strikes me as being a way to criticise a team when you can't do anything historic because there's a big shiny trophy in the way. And I think Slot will be finding it frustrating that he's having to... He's almost been treated like he's a coach in his first season, but he's not. He's a coach in his second season, and his first season ended with the Premier League title.
Yeah, but it's been airbrushed out because aura. By the way, aura, it's just like another fascinating concept. We don't have time to go into it, but there was a tweet this weekend about Liam Rosenior by a Chelsea fan. He was having a beer in a hotel. I don't know if you saw it, Raw. And the tweet was, "This is our manager, zero aura." And someone retweeted it by just saying, what do you expect the man to be doing in this situation to show aura? He's having a beer in a hotel.
Here's a photo of Diego Maradona taking his bin out. He's got no aura. Here's Johan Cruyff doing the washing. He's got no aura. Of course you've not got any aura in that. There's certain situations in which you don't need aura. In fact, I'd say if you're having a pint in a hotel and you probably just want to relax, having aura is an active disadvantage.
I love people who are obsessed with aura. Ronaldo has never farted, ever.
I've heard that Lionel Messi sometimes goes to the toilet.
No!
It's completely ruined my impression of him.
But by the way, even then, Aura King, Liverpool. By the way, I'm taking us to a very, very dark place, so I am going to move on. Liverpool, it needs to be said, mixed form themselves, 8 points out of their last 18. Draw Kings, worn down by injuries. Florian Wirtz out of the starting lineup, Curtis Jones in instead. Soboslai at right back, Gravenberch playing the midfield anchor. They've been slow starters this season, and they just seem to be all over the place, coughing up the ball in the final third on repeat. Callum Hudson-Odoi went through early, should have scored. Alisson honestly saved the day. Liverpool were abysmal in this first half. Forest, new manager bouncing. Pereira had them running harder, closing down faster. But Raw, from a Forest POV, it was the inability to convert that did in Sean Dyche down the stretch. I think they had 35 shots in his last home game without scoring against the Wolves. Here, they had 18 and couldn't put the biscuit in the basket.
Yeah, they had 18 shots and they were vastly the better team. I don't want to pretend anything other. But I would say they didn't have, apart from that Hudson-Odoi one and maybe Milenkovic in the second half, they didn't have that many clear-cut chances. And I wonder if that's as much the issue, that you're not creating really high-quality chances, which means that you're going to have plenty of shots, but maybe your XG won't be that high. Maybe they're not the sort of opportunities that lend themselves to absolute conversion. I think that might be the issue that Forest have, is figuring out a way not to create chances, that's not a problem, but to create really high-quality chances.
That inability to finish actually seemed like it took a cumulative effect on Forest. You can almost see their confidence bleeding out of them as Liverpool upped their intensity in that second half, but did lack the clinicality themselves in that final third. I mean, the game, it was a purgatory of fear, a little bit of self-loathing for long stretches. Curtis Jones dallied on the ball. Gakpo slowed everything down. Salah, 9 Premier League games without a goal now, back to his Sadmo era, which is hard to watch. Seething when he was subbed off. But honestly, 17-year-old Rio came on and in a tiny cameo just gave Liverpool so much life, so much edge, so much energy that they were lacking before he came on. I've got to ask you this quickly. Are we starting to be in a do Liverpool miss Florian Wirtz era? Is this where we are?
Yeah, got to admit, when I saw the team an hour before the game, I thought, okay, that makes sense. And then when I saw the starting lineup and Curtis Jones was in it and Wirtz wasn't, I really like Curtis Jones. I actually think Curtis Jones is really underrated, Rog. But I thought, okay, well, that changes the equation substantially, because Florian Wirtz is Liverpool's creative fulcrum. They are a much better team when he is in it. I don't know if he'd have helped hugely given the way the rest of the team performed in those certainly the first half, first hour maybe. But without him there, it hugely diminishes Liverpool's threat in any number of ways now.
And it seemed like this was heading to another dank Forest experience for Arne Slot. Never won, drawn 2 losses against your tricky trees. Their fans delighted in taunting him with the zombie song that were in your head. But he had other ideas. First, Alexis McAllister, goal notched off. He had block clearance into the net. Was it in the 89th minute with his arm? And a little bit with the backside of God. A reprieve which lasted until the 97th because, wow, Premier League script writers were on one. Served up the worst sequel since Deuce Bigelow, European Gigolo. McAllister again swooped in to bundle the ball home after some long throw chaos. Late winner at the death. McAllister like some kind of Argentinian Jack Hughes. Smash, grab. VAR said it was onside. If only Nottingham Forest still had their referee consultant Raw. But from a Liverpool POV, probably all the more delicious because it was, even Slot said post-game they didn't deserve it at all. But when you think about where they are, that desperate need for Champions League football and the fact that they do it late so often, I think the most winning goal, 7th this was in the 90th minute or later ever by a team in the campaign. This was a terrible game. Critical goal, massive win, goal of life.
Yeah, I would just like to say on record, it's insane that the first one was ruled out. It's completely insane that goal didn't stand. And I don't need to go into it, but I just thought that was ridiculous. I think it's a hugely important win. As you say, Liverpool's form is kind of the perfect petri dish for this Premier League season. I think they've now only lost 2 in 20, and yet it feels like if they'd drawn this game, they'd have been in crisis. That is the Premier League. They haven't got enough points. Going to Forest is a really hard game for Liverpool. There is a lot of animosity from Nottingham Forest to Liverpool. It's not particularly reciprocated. It's one of those games where it's much bigger for one side than the other, dating back to the 1970s and 80s when they were direct rivals. That's where it comes from. So getting away with a point in normal circumstances is a really good result for Liverpool. To win it in those to win it like that is a massive bonus, but you still have that question mark, which is they beat Sunderland, Liverpool, 10 days ago and played quite well. They won 1-0 and played quite well against a good team, difficult conditions. They then beat Brighton at home, a sad Brighton not in a good moment, all that stuff. And you think, okay, they're starting to get results and put performances together. This was the result, which I guess in the circumstances is what matters. But I think for a lot of fans, there's still a huge question mark over why is this team so bad to watch? Why do they not play very well very often? What is the issue that most of the time this season they've produced performances that have been okay for bits and then genuinely abysmal? And, if Callum Hudson-Odoi straws early on, if Alisson's not there, if Milenkovic's header goes, 3 inches the other way, then there's every chance that Liverpool lose that game. Not just lose that game, but maybe lose it quite heavily, like 2 or 3-0, because they were so poor in that first half. That's a real issue. And I've got to admit, as much as I don't want to kind of get on the Wayne Rooney bandwagon, it is the reason that Slot keeps getting this criticism, because he's not solved that problem. There are no convincing performances.
You've convinced me, Rory. It is all right. By the way, one small note. This week we released our new report, Soccer's Coming Home, which is an in-depth study of global soccer fandom in the United States. It's analysing the results of a survey taken by thousands of you, actually, our Men in Blazers community, fused with some national data from our friends at YouGov. It's an important read that talks about how American fandom is similar to the English and European fandom that you see, but also incredibly different. You can find it linked in the show notes below. It mean a lot to me if you read through it and let us know what you think. But one statistic that stood out is just how massive Liverpool are in the United States of America. Top 10 Premier League fandoms. Chelsea have 13% in third. Arsenal 16%. But Liverpool have an enormous 22%. So many Americans made their choice after 2013, remember, when NBC started to broadcast the Premier League. So they've never seen, say, a good Manchester United team. We are a massive nation of Reds, Ro.
Yeah, I know. Someone sent me a response on X from someone who said that the survey was discredited because I'd done it. Which I mean, I would have loved to. Would have loved to have put together an entire massive survey for Men in Blazers, but I don't really have time, to be honest. And then made up the results, obviously. I think that was the implication that I'd just lied.
Is that right? Bants plus aura equals lies. By the way, incredibly, Everton have 5% of fans and are in 6th place.
That's your fault.
I'd say I blame it more on Tim Howard and Brian McBride.
No, it's your fault.
Roberto Martinez, kind of when football started here, was on television a lot. I'm not saying it's my fault, but I will say I feel a heavy responsibility for the darkness I brought into your hearts. Find the report, Soccer's Coming Home, and let us know what you think. We've got to move on with the football. Aston Villa 1, Leeds United, who are also one of the top 10 teams in the United States, 1. Two of England's proudest teams, both of whom in different ways have quietly overperformed this season. Aston Villa, the 3rd place team no one talks about anymore, but they entered this game needing to rebound from that Marco Bizot inspired FA Cup madness last weekend. Visitors here, Leeds, another low-key story of the season, 6 points above the relegation zone. They're kind of growing quite feistily in their own style into the campaign. Only Manchester United and City had lost fewer games since the start of December than your Leeds. But they'd won very little on the road. I think they'd only won once away all season. Genuinely impressive for much of this one. Hard-working, hunting in packs. 31st minute, free kick from 30 yards out. Aston Villa goalkeeper, prop comic Emi Martinez, all set for Anton Stach to cross it. And Stock, like a pitcher, looks over his shoulder and sees the runner with a massive lead off. Just fired it was like an absolute blast, like Wolf Blitzer, straight into the situation room. Emi Martinez, though, my God. Aston Villa, you live by the Emi Martinez, you die by the Emi Martinez. That will drive Unai Emery insane, Ro. Yeah,
and it does feel as though in the last few weeks that those mistakes have crept into Martinez's game just a little bit more, having been relatively reliable at the start of the season. And Villa more generally are kind of suffering from, I don't know whether to characterise it as a little bit of bad luck, the fine margins going against them. Maybe it's the fine margins not going for them. and suddenly you're 1-0 down to a Leeds team who are in really good form.
Yeah, I mean, another statistic on Leeds, though, is that they concede late. No side has let in more than their 14 goals conceded in the last 50 minutes of a game. So, I think for every Leeds fan, I know, no surprise, 83rd minute, from a Villa corner, Tammy Abraham scored. God bless Tammy. It's incredible to see him. It's his first goal back in the Premier League since 2020, Boxing Day, I think. Best Abraham since Lincoln. What a career he's had. Some real highs, some real lows. Been in Italy for a chunk. Had that surreal one-day loan to Besiktas, like they're in the semi-retirement league in Turkey. But now he's back. Outside chance, too, of becoming England's reserve striker in the World Cup squad. Villa stay 6 points clear of fourth place Chelsea. Third place with a get-right game against Wolves coming up on Friday. But Roy, I want to talk quickly about Leeds, because they started the season woefully. 11 points from their first 13 games. They're on the ropes, look like another relegation dogfight. But they stuck with Daniel Farke. And he's proven he changed the tactics, went from a possession-aspiring team to a counter-attacking team, proven he's more than just a championship manager. It's really been remarkable to watch him. Anyway, I'm fond of this man. I love any man who, when they're asked to describe themselves, as he was by journalists, he said, I am 95% coffee and cake on the sofa. I'm 5% fire beast. Bite your arm off to be a fire beast, Ro. I think it's a German word, is it?
Even 5%. Fire beast. I'd love to be 5% fire beast, just even occasionally.
Yeah, I know. The fire beast that lies within all of us. I think my fire beast is calibrated at 3%. And I believe German scholars, it is a German, I think it might mean party animal, fire beast. But honestly, I'd rather be a fire beast than a party animal. I
do happen to know that Daniel Farke, this is a true fact, Rog, Daniel Farke likes to keep his living environment, his living quarters very, very warm. Maybe that is 100% true. I cannot reveal my source on it, but he likes to have the central heating on. That may well be to maintain the fire beast within him.
Yeah, the fire beast that lies within. You've got to sustain the fire beast.
You can't have a fire beast and be cold.
What I want to know is, how much credit does the fire beast deserve for this Leeds Renaissance? And how much credit should the Leeds ownership be in a in a football world in which managers are utterly dispensable, sticking with him when they they were on the brink of a relegation fight. You smash glass, you get rid of that manager. They stuck with him and have been rewarded for it.
I think they saw enough in the performances, even in that first 3 months of the season, to think we stand a chance. I don't think things ever got quite so bad that they felt they didn't have a choice. And that, I suppose, is both testament to their patience, but also Farke's ability to build something slowly, maybe a little bit slowly at the start at Leeds. The other thing I think that both Farke and the ownership deserve credit for is the recruitment in the summer, which addressed Leeds' problems and gave them a squad that stands a chance of staying up. They are big, they are physical, they work, they can hurt teams in a variety of ways. They're not too one-dimensional. He's still got players like Willie Gnonto who haven't really contributed this season. Leeds' sort of tricky dribblers haven't done a huge amount. They've taken a much more robust, much more physical approach. That was very clearly a conscious choice, and it has paid off.
Up the fire beast. 3 straight games at home now at their Bear Pit, starting next Saturday when they say "Hey up" to Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. To more aspirational dreamers, Chelsea won. Burnley, what? Won! Liam Rosenior put his 80% Premier League win record back into the court of public opinion. Heavy favourites. Burnley kept him at bay for longer than they probably ever dared imagine. Whole 4 big boy minutes before Caicedo sprang Neto, burned down the flank, rolled a delicious ball to the Kenny Loggins danger zone for Pedro to bundle home himself, the ball, the goalkeeper, and it felt like they should stroll on. But the goal actually had the opposite impact on Chelsea. Instead of stepping up to kill off the game, they just evaporated as a force, really. Kind of coasted, believed that 4th place was theirs by right. The players had a much bantered about 4-day vacation this week, Raw, taking time out in the sun, which they truly deserve. The Club World Cup still heavy legging them. But it was utterly surreal in this one too. See them switch off, lose their shape, their hunger, ultimately concede to a James Ward-Prowse powered corner down the stretch. This was a game they should have won. It was right there for them. The boos rang out at Stamford Bridge full time, and Rosenior himself said he was angry. We've set fire to 4 points in the last 2 games at home.
Yeah, and if you look at the table, it's really hard to argue with him, because there was a point 10 days ago, where Chelsea could kind of gone clear of Liverpool, certainly in sixth, and put a real daylight between them in that chase for what will probably be fifth place. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference whether you finish fourth or fifth, but you don't want to finish sixth. And they had two not easy home games against Leeds and Burnley. There's no such thing as an easy game, but even beyond that, Leeds for Chelsea is tricky. It's got a lot of historic weight. That game, Leeds are in good form, but to only get 2 points from those games is basically a reprieve. To be honest, for Liverpool, it's a reprieve for Liverpool, and it's an encouragement for Manchester United. And that is the sort of thing that Chelsea might come to regret, because their fixtures now get a little bit trickier.
Yeah, I've got to credit Burnley, who may be borderline down and out, but have never really lost their fight. But there were so many Chelsea tropes in this one. Fofana got a second yellow for stamping down on Ward-Prowse, which is just your communal standard Chelsea red card. Had to play the last 28 minutes with 10 men. League high, 6 red of a very, very undisciplined season. Cole Palmer visibly pissed off when he was subbed out. And Liam said post-game, "I'm learning on who you can lean when things aren't going your way." Which is pretty revealing. But then a very weird line. He said a marking assignment was missed. There's a player who I won't name. I'm not here to throw players under the bus. I'll always protect my players. There was a player who we assigned that duty who marked the wrong player, which was kind of like him throwing the player under the bus. I thought it was a very odd comment. This is a man who understands communication. He's worked in the media. Being that overtly, attempting to be enigmatic, if that's a thing, it was a curious choice. Really a reminder that for all the freedom he loves to give his players, Liam Rossini, he's working out the limits pretty fast. Yeah,
it's sort of throwing them under the bus, but not revealing which bus route, I suppose, is the
under which tyre.
Yeah, he's under the bus, but I'm not going to specify a tyre. I think the problem is that he's probably angry, isn't he? That's the issue. That those press conferences, the flash interviews, the TV interviews happen within about 5 minutes of the game finishing. And the press conference, it might be 25, 30 minutes, but it may well be that he's not cooled down enough in that situation. And I think that's a very human response to it. But yeah, I agree. It doesn't take much to work out, if you're so inclined, which player did the wrong thing. It is singling a player out, whether you name them or not. And that is a risky approach for any manager.
Quick word, but an important word, because the lasting memory of this game is a really dark one. Hannibal and Wesley Fofana were both racially abused on Instagram in the wake of the game. Hannibal, the victim of the stamp, Fofana, the stamper. Hannibal posted the abuse he'd received via direct messages on Instagram and wrote, "It's 2026 and there's still people like that. Educate yourself and your kids, please." Fofana likewise posted the abuse he received. It's awful to read, to be honest. Both clubs put out statements decrying the racism. They were not alone this weekend. Several clubs had to do the same. Wolves too. We've talked about the booing at games now just becoming standard behaviour. We now say, it's just the social media world going into the real world. It's part of football now. We can't become desensitised to this and just allow it to become part of the game, this racism. It's not similar. Yes, I think it is a reflection of just a horrific social media abuse that is deemed appropriate in parts of the internet that's flung back into football. But this can't become a pattern where clubs just after every game are forced to put out a statement and players are forced to post it. It is a brutal reflection of where we are.
Yeah, it's genuinely horrendous. I don't really have the words for it, to be honest, Rog, because obviously it's a week after Vinicius being racially abused or allegedly racially abused by a Benfica player, definitely being racially abused by Benfica fans. I don't know whether is it that something like that kind of makes people feel more entitled to do it? Is it that it's just happening all the time and it's got a little bit more attention this week because of the background to Vinicius? It feels, unfortunately, like it's probably the second one, to be honest. It's just happening constantly. The clubs will put out statements when they feel they have to, but just makes you question. And I think this came up when Vincent Kompany was talking about Vinicius in the aftermath of what happened in Lisbon. What about all those players in the lower leagues or in other countries or in, at clubs where they're not putting out statements? What are the players getting that they're not reporting to their clubs? What are the players getting that they're not reporting to the authorities? I just find it. I don't know what the solution is. I wish I could say the social media platform should do this or the club should do that. I don't understand how you can watch football now and be racist. I just don't get it. I don't think it makes sense. I think if that's the way you think, it's probably not the sport for you, to be honest.
Amen, Ro. And also, I think the saddest part of this is I do not know how you fix it. But it is genuinely the heartbreaking lining to almost every weekend at this point. To lesser footballing issues in South London, Crystal Palace 1, Wolves 0. I do think the Oliver Glasner descent will be studied by historians. Well, this was a much needed win for Crystal Palace to kind of, take away the bad breath smell which has descended upon their season. Wolves missed a penalty, needed a last minute winner against 10 men ultimately to clinch this. It's hard for me to watch that 9 months ago Crystal Palace were at their highest point in the FA Cup final, unveiling stunning tifos filled with joy, history, pride and wonder. Now they're starting games by pulling out black banners saying opportunities missed, board inept, fans disrespectful, Glasner finished. That in its own right is just an utter agony. Palace fans, God bless them, ended the game by singing 1-0 to the humble boys, a reference to their own manager, Oliver Glasner, who'd gone on another fairly painful, surreal, quite remarkable press conference tirade, this time addressing the fans who had vented their anger after a 1-1 draw at Bosnian duffers Zrinski Mostar in the Conference League. They sang Sacked in the morning to vent their disappointment at Glasner, who is leaving anyway at the end of the season. This man who's a giant delivered FA Cup glory, Community Shield glory. And he said in his press conference to the fans who'd watched their team bleakly go to just saying, 1 win in 15 now. He said, I'd say the most important thing is to stay humble. I think it's the same for the fans. Stay humble. Never forget where you're coming from. I think a few who are so critical in this situation are not humble anymore. Forget where you're coming from, and usually in life, you're punished for this. This is true in life, but is it in football? Because Glasner, can't a club... What he's saying is a club can't change. His heel turn, by the way, is pretty incredible to witness. Can't a club change? Can the aspirations change? Or are they what they are? Because what he's kind of saying is, he's saying the club that you love, the club you travel to Bosnia to watch draw 1-1, they're just a meme stock. They're like GameStop. They're like AMC Cinemas. What we did last year, not sustainable.
Yeah, it's a weird message to send out. And I think I get Glasner wanting to get the message to the fans that maybe you have to appreciate what you've got. You look back at what Palace achieved last year, the fact that they are in Europe, the fact that with this win, they're not at any real risk of relegation. They're going to finish mid-table in the Premier League. Like all that stuff historically for Palace is pretty impressive. That is kind of where they have been. This is to an extent a golden period. I've got a friend of mine who's a Palace fan who said to me the other day that you can very easily make the case that Glasner is the club's greatest ever manager. But there's a way to do it and there's a time to do it. And I think Glasner has maybe used up a lot of his credit by the way this season has played out. People are not inclined to think... They're not inclined to take the kind of reading at the moment, I think.
Yeah, failing to beat AEK Larnaca, Coopium Palacera, Macclesfield and Zrinski Mostar. It's not really Oliver Glasner lecturing from a great position of strength. And I know that they're hoping they can just make it to the end of the season with him. But he is going to, I fear, use every single press conference as a chance to dump on the club, because the thing he cares about right now is his legacy. And he's telling his own story, almost to look after his next move. I'm not sure it can really hold.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's interesting as well, the impact that it's possibly having on his future employment prospects. Because 3 months ago, Glasner would have been really in demand for Tottenham, say, in the summer, even for Manchester United, potentially. Certainly for jobs in Germany. Now, I'm not so sure. I think all of this stuff is the sort of stuff that is taken into consideration by clubs when they come to hire managers. And I'm not sure the way Glasner's playing this, and it's a real shame because his story in itself is really inspiring, as we've talked about before. I'm not sure the way he's playing this helps his case at all, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a piece of wisdom that was said on our show. You meet everybody in life twice. Once when you're on the way up, when you're on the way down. Treat them the same both times. And watching Oliver Glasner, it's a piece of advice that ultimately, as a man who's giving out advice, could probably benefit from. In other games, West Ham 0, Oh, Bournemouth 0. Two of the Premier League's form teams really served up quite a tranquiliser of a game. Third bottom West Ham spun a chance to continue their great escape. They got Liverpool, City, Villa in 3 of the next 5. So a real frustration at full time knowing what's coming next. Could have been worse. 19-year-old Brazilian goal monster Ryan strolled downfield, beat pretty well the whole West Ham team on the way to goal and grazed the bar in the second half. But Raw, this was these two teams' 6th draw in a row. So I guess at least they're consistent.
That is I didn't know that. That is fascinating.
Isn't it amazing?
It's incredible. There must just be... I do think that sometimes happens, that teams just have a formula. And you see it with, say, Palace always seem to beat Villa. I don't know what it is, but Palace just seem to know how to play against Unai Emery's Villa. Maybe West Ham and Bournemouth are each other's opposite. Maybe they just can't... They automatically, in the kind of universal order of things, just cancel each other out.
I mean, maybe they were just both very crap at football in this one. I will say it was joyous to see my friend Tyler Adams back starting for Bournemouth. His first appearance as a starter in 68 days after picking up that MCL injury against Manchester United. In a massive year for the US men's national team. It's so good to have one of our real leaders back on the field. And Tyler returns to our network this Wednesday, February 25th. We taped a beautiful show about that return from injury and what that feels like. And I can't wait for you to hear it. I love that man. Sunderland 1, Fulham 3. Having started with that incredible 12-match unbeaten run at home in the Premier League, Sunderland have now lost 2 games on the trot. Their only joy was having their rock and saviour, Xhaka, come in for the second half after a 4-match absence, which is correlated. I mean, it's their heart, and they've lost 4 of their last 5 now. Here they were done by a sprightly Fulham. 34-year-old Raul Jimenez, nearly 6 years since his career was almost finished by a skull fracture, just keeps on scoring. 2 goals here. 1, a penalty, which took him to 13 out of 13 from the spot. I think the best 100% record in the Premier League history. Raw, I always believe Raul Jimenez does not get the credit which he deserves. Is he the Harry Wilson of Raul Jimenez's?
Yeah, Fulham have got quite a lot of players like that. Just you should throw Iwobi into the mix as well, I think. Yeah, his story is remarkable because I think not only did you assume his career might be over after that head injury, that horrendous head injury, but I think even without that, people would have thought by 34, Raul Jimenez is not necessarily the sort of player who would be tearing trees up in the Premier League. But he's Fulham's cutting edge. He's incredibly consistent. He's incredibly reliable. He's a real asset to them, and to be honest, kind of to the league in general. He is a positive presence, Raul Jimenez.
Oh, talking about positives, the real positive of the weekend for me was that Everton did not play. We face Manchester United tonight. And Manchester United, who are nemesis of all barbers, also I think have beaten Everton more than they've beaten any other team. Also beaten us on the road more than they have any other team. So my anticipation is measured. I've been thinking a lot about Everton this weekend. There's a lot of Everton fans who are very disappointed with David Moyes, the missionary position football, all that stuff. I actually more and more watch other teams, see where we are in the table. It's bloody alchemy to get us where we are meant to be without fullbacks and without any kind of reliable striker. There's a stat banded around from Opta's data editor Aaron Barton, who put out that Everton have had just 8 different goal scorers in the Premier League this season. 8. It's the fewest of any team in the league, and is truly a remarkable way to capture the paucity of cutting edge. And yet, despite, we still have hope. And again, so many of you ride with Everton. At Big Source only tweeted, Rodgers' 20-year campaign to convert Americans to Everton should be studied. You're on to me, Big Source. That study, when I found out how many of you are living and dying with the Blues, genuinely, come ride with me. May we see silverware and joy in our lifetimes. But Roy, you were at the Hill Dickinson this week, right? Really quite a fascinating piece. It's a place where we began strong, we started to stumble and eat our own at that mighty new stadium. Just give us a quick blast on what you discovered by talking to the groundsman. Yeah,
I've been fascinated by how the Premier League's pitches are holding up in the face of the relentless British rain, Rog. So I went to meet John Howell, who is Everton, the head groundsman at the Hill Dickinson, who's a lovely man, a big bear of a man, very strong handshake. That was my first observation. Intimidatingly strong handshake, but a very soft man at the same time. And he kind of talked me through everything they do to make that pitch look as good as it does, and the challenges they face in doing that. But some of the details I just thought were extraordinary. So the south stand, I want to get this right. The south stand is several degrees cooler than the north stand at the Hill Dickinson.
We need more fire beasts.
You need a lot more fire beasts. They need portable fire beasts brought into the stadium. They didn't have any. This is a measure of the British winter, Rog. They had sun on the 1st of November because one of the ground staff remembers seeing it hit the corner flag, a lovely shaft of light glinting on the corner flag. The next time they had direct sunlight on any part of the pitch was this week. There was no direct sunlight on any of the pitch in 4 months.
Admit it, you found yourself a bit jealous. You're like, that's a lot.
I was thinking, do you know what? It's a tanning weather.
Greedy
yeah,
bastards.
Come on, share it out. But the level of detail they go into, they've got a cushion of air under the pitch that means they can drain it and pump and heat it. The technology that they use is remarkable. The stuff they know about the soil, about the turf at that stadium is incredible. But what really amazed me was that John said it was totally different to looking after the pitch at Goodison, that each stadium has its own microclimate, that the grass needs totally different things, that the weather conditions can be like starkly different despite the fact it's only like 4 miles apart. It was really, really fascinating. And the main thing that I really liked was there's something really thrilling about someone who really loves their job. When you speak to someone who really loves their job and really gets something out of it and finds it intensely satisfying, it's really hard not to be uplifted. So I thought Everton would win anyway this game, Roger. I think you do a win against United. But I now particularly want Everton to win for my friend John and his lovely, lovely pitch.
Oh, young listeners, if you've not seen the film Being There with Chauncey the Gardener, Peter Sellers, perhaps his finest role. I don't know why I just thought of that, where you're talking about this man who loves his job, loves his grass, just loves toiling to the earth. Go and watch that. You'll feel better about life, probably than I will this afternoon when Everton play Manchester United. But it's not about me. Let's take a letter. Raw, do the honours. This one comes to our mailbag from Taher Lokhandwala from Houston. Oh, we're going there. Raw, do the honours.
I'm sure they'll be coming. Thank you for the amazing year of reliving football with you so far. I love the way you both love the game, and I'm beyond excited to see you at my alma mater, Rice University, soon, and to read your book, Rog.
I love you, Taher.
I hope you've bought several signed copies. Rog, you recently talked about Arsenal fans being the opposite of Larry King, divorced 8 times and terrified to fall in love for the 9th. Well, that definitely resonated. I feel like I've always been the Arsenal fan who actually is Larry King. This will be interesting. And still believe.
Dead.
You inspired me to lean into my Larryness. And so I've decided to make my first Premier League game and my first ever visit to the UK the mighty Arsenal's final day at Selhurst Park. Ooh. My partner and I are stopping over in London for 4 days on our way back to Houston from Istanbul. I'd go to a game in Istanbul. That's the first thing. I'm stopping this there. Go to Besiktas if you can.
Yeah, and how's my hair suddenly flourishing? I don't know, but to Arsenal, to your letter.
Here's what's going to happen. My Gunners are going into the match 3 points clear, so the title won't already have been handed to them at home against Burnley on May the 17th. On a day that's basically guaranteed celebration, they'll then win 4-0 and lift the league title in glorious sunshine. And although I sadly won't be able to join the title parade the next day because they'll be heading to the Champions League final a week later, this final day trophy lift is going to be one of the greatest days of my 39-year-old life. Right, Rog and Rory? Right? This is what's going to happen, isn't it? I'm so grateful for you both, and I hope I don't end up with that 9th divorce feeling. Courage to hair.
God, is there a thing? Is there like a philosophical approach to life that's just radical, slightly deranged positivity? Well, I guess Taher is asking about dreams, about positivity, which is thin on the ground currency, admittedly, for all of us. I think he's also asking, how does this season finish? So do the honours.
Well, first of all, this is alien to me, because I am the sort of fan who tries to manifest in my head the worst possible outcome, so I'm forewarned against it. That I think is a much healthier way to exist. I think Taher's probably not that far off, to be honest. I don't think it'll be settled really early on. I think it will swing on that game at the Etihad between City and Arsenal, which I think will be a draw, and I think that will hand the momentum to Arsenal. It will mean that they will have, they'll carry the destiny of the title with them through to the end of the season. My personal instinct is that they might go into that final day 2 points clear, so there's still a little bit of jeopardy. They have to win at Palace, and I'm going to say that they will be drawing at the time when Manchester City take the lead that day. So there is genuine peril for Arsenal, but I think they come through it and take the title at the last. The one final little note I would
By the
say...
way, are you talking about Ange Postecoglou's interim palace?
It would be Ange Postecoglou's interim palace. The one final note I would say is that Tottenham might be in luck, because if they're in the Champions League final, they won't do a parade the day after they win the league. They'll combine the two. So you won't miss a parade in those circumstances, but you might have to come back if they do the double.
I've got to say, Raw, I do admire Tahir's positivity. It is amazing. So many Arsenal fans I know are not, let's admit it, I'm not enjoying a single second of this. So I want to bottle your approach. I spent some time reading a lot about Larry King this week because of your letter. He says Kingy, by the way, would have been a real Arsenal fan, I bet. Proper Kingy. He once said, there's nothing in your destiny, nothing in your future that you cannot accomplish. Breathe that in. I mean, that is right out of Arteta's team talks in All or Nothing, isn't it? He also said, those who have succeeded at anything and don't mention luck are kidding themselves, which we talk about a lot. In terms of his many weddings, I just don't know. I don't think it was good for love, if I'm being honest. I think it was probably only good for wedding DJs. But here's the truth. I believe in Arsenal. I really do. I believe in Arteta too. I think he's doing the hardest thing that is possible. He's not just trying to win a league. He's trying to change who he is, what his club have been for over the past 22 years. In Larry King's wedding analogy, I think Arsenal they have to be the bridesmaids, right? And England, we talked about this, does not like change, doesn't want you to change. We like people to be who they are, especially people who are losers. We love losers because then we can laugh at them and feel better about ourselves, which is, yes, cruel and twisted way to approach life, but that's how life is lived. It's almost a remnant of the class system that doesn't allow you to have ideas above your station to hair. So what Arteta's doing, what Eze did yesterday to make himself more than a footnote, a cruel footnote to the season. But again, I am the main man. Again, look at the YouTube interview, track those comments. Everyone be like, the man's sharp, he's horrific, he's terrible at football, man's a bust. Then right after that game, it was just like, oh, he's blessed, he's a king, he's a demigod. This is what we're witnessing. And for that reason, more than anything, I pray you are right to hear that Rory's analogy at the end of the season is right. That your boys are pure 100% Larry King. Still believing, and like Rihanna, that you're going to find you, Larry King, Arsenal Football Club, going to find love in the hopeless place. Because ultimately the world needs more love. Thank you for your letter to Hare. Keep writing to all of us at meninblazers@gmail.com. I do try and answer everything that comes into the mailbag. Want to give huge thanks to Bank of America, official bank of US soccer, and the FIFA World Cup 2026 for supporting the Men in Blazers media network. Discover what's possible in sports and in life. What would you like the power to do? That is it for today. I'm going to go and dig out my own path. My dog just ran outside and completely disappeared in the snow. I had to pull out Martin Scorsese. Raw, you're a beautiful human being. We'll be back tomorrow with European nights. I'll be back post-Champions League games on Wednesday at the final whistle with the mighty James Horncastle. Come and join us and ask him your questions on YouTube. Raw, we'll rock it on Friday, but big love. Thank you, man.
And on Friday, we can say a succession of things that are completely contradictory to what we've just said today, Rog. That's the Premier League.
Yes, aura, bants, self-deception, no consistency, approach life with at least 2 out of those 4. You'll be all right. This is Rod saying, let's not take a second of watching football together for granted, and courage.